Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 217. Now, it's not often that I get to talk to people that are relatively close to me. Now, I'm not sitting with them. I've only actually ever done one show when I was sitting with the person, and that was with Phil Graham when I went over to Ireland to see him, to spend the day with him. But this lady lives about 45 minutes down the road from me, from Essex. So if you think there's a little bit of a London Essex twang in my voice, you're about to get it in even heavier doses now. Jaclyn, welcome to the show. Hello.
Hello, thank you, Ben.
But you're female, so it'll add a classy edge because I'm not a classy person. Now, there'll be a decent chunk of the audience that will have no idea who you are. So give me a little bit of background. Who are you? What do you do? What got you into the health and fitness space?
Okay, so I'm going to take you back a little bit, so about 7 years ago, because it's a massive part of my journey to how I got where I am now. So 7 years ago, I was an accountant in the city of London, working quite long hours, sick and tired, feeling sick and tired, not having the time to do anything about it, eating quite poorly, used to faint maybe 3-4 times a week. It was all very random, could be on the tube and just pass out. And eventually I was having all these tests done, and the doctor said to me, you have pernicious anemia and you need to have a monthly injection of B12 because you can no longer absorb it through your body or through your diet. So I thought at the time, okay, well, if that's all I need, an injection once a month, I'll take that, that's fine, it's going to make me feel better. So just carried on regardless, in a job I didn't really like, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then I lost my mum. So my mum was 64. She'd been ill for about 10 years with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And it wasn't a shock, but it changed me because it made me look at my life and think, you don't know how long you've got here, and you can make a choice if you want to spend it doing something you like and you enjoy it and you make an impact to people and you can help change people, or you can just spend it earning some money and not very happy. So I changed everything. I went to study to be a hypnotherapist. I got 6 months into hypnotherapy, and we done hypnotherapy for weight management, which I kind of sat there and thought, not only could this change somebody's life, it could quite possibly save somebody's life, them away from being really overweight and eating really badly. So I came home to my husband and I was like, I think I want to study nutrition as well, because, you know, how can I be a hypnotherapist specialising in weight management and not doing anything and giving anybody any kind of indication of, okay, this is how you should be eating. Okay, we eat less, but what you're going to eat less of. So he said, okay, fine, you go off and study some nutrition as well. So I done them simultaneously, studied for a diploma in nutrition, and which was tough going, lots and lots of late nights till kind of 2-3 in the morning because I was doing 2 courses at once, but got very addicted to studying. When I finished the diploma in nutrition, I really loved the holistic side that she didn't go really in depth with. So I then went and studied with the CHEK Institute. I'm sure you're aware of Paul CHEK's stuff. So I studied with the CHEK Institute to do holistic lifestyle coaching, and I'm still going through their exams now. Absolutely love all the CHEK stuff. And just to take it back to my own illness, when I then started studying nutrition, I realised that we done lots of stuff on kind of autoimmune diseases and gut health and how it's quite possible to heal your gut. And I thought, hang on a minute, my B12 has stopped being absorbed through my intrinsic factor, which is in the gut. It's part of your gut lining that doesn't work. So maybe if I heal that, it will start absorbing again. Let's give it a go. So I went through a whole heal your gut process on myself, removing food irritants, restoring the gut lining, putting some good bacteria back in with fermented foods and good supplements. And lo and behold, I haven't had a B12 injection for 5 years now. So it can be done. I'm sure that can't be the case for absolutely everybody, but I think I'm kind of proof in the pudding that you can give it a really good go and make yourself feel a lot better with lifestyle alone. And you don't have to be dependent on medication. I see what I do as complementary, not alternatives, because I wouldn't say to somebody, you need to come off all your medication to follow these processes. But I would hope over time that, and certainly I have had clients that have come to me on quite a lot of meds, and we've really worked on reducing them, if they are willing to, just by implementing lots of different positive lifestyle changes.
Interesting. So, I mean, I've been through quite a journey myself with the gut, and I think it's a fascinating area of nutrition, and it's one that keeps obviously being debated for and against. There's an awful lot of research being done by practitioners themselves, and top level research. Just out of interest, what were your trigger foods, and when you were going through that process of gut healing, what did it actually look like for you? I know it's an individual case, but I'm interested.
Well, what I did is what I now do with clients. So the program that I run, the Heal Gut program, I just call it the 3 R's. We remove, restore, replenish. So I am a food intolerance practitioner. There's lots of different ways you can do food intolerance testing. You can have kinetic muscle testing and all different things. But I think you really can't argue with the science of blood. So I take a finger prick of blood, and we send that off to a laboratory in York. They test 156 different ingredients for IgG antibody reaction in the gut. Now, I know there are lots of mainstream doctors that you may go to for IBS, and they'll say there's absolutely no evidence to show that just because you have an IgG antibody reaction in the gut, that's the thing that's triggering your condition. But saying that, I have had success with myself. I've had success with numerous clients where we have identified an intolerance through a finger prick of blood, an IgG antibody test. We've removed them things from the diet. For me, the main one was yeast. Yeast was a massive, massive trigger, and I think it was really trying to tell me that I should have cut down on my drinking, because the top one was yeast, and then it was grape, Shiraz, grape, Chardonnay, grape, Pinot Grigio. So I was like, okay, I get you. So I just took them things out of my diet. And one of the things that I say to my clients, it's not about taking them out of the diet indefinitely forever. You can never eat like this again. If you go through a healing process in the gut, sometimes, not all the time, you can start to have them and introduce them again without a reaction. But that really is dependent on the person, because obviously everyone has a different biological matrix.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So when you were going through, coming back actually to the yeast, so do you think it was more of a gut lining thing or a candida thing in terms of a yeast overgrowth problem?
I think I had a bit of intestinal permeability. So I think that over time, and the reason I think this is because as a little girl, when I was about 4 to the age of about 9 or 10, I had undiagnosed asthma, or childhood asthma if you like. It's completely gone now because I wasn't an adult that grew up and didn't exercise and smoked. I grew out of it, but during them years I was on a lot of different antibiotics, because that was the kind of era where doctors handed them out if you had a little bit of a cough, runny nose. It was just, my mum would give me Lucozade and I'd have antibiotics, and that was the healing process there. Wow. It's crazy. So I had a lot of antibiotics, so I do suspect that I had a little bit of intestinal permeability, or leaky gut syndrome as it's often called. So I think that's why pernicious anemia started, because that is a class as an autoimmune condition now. Mm-hmm. And the very nature of an autoimmune condition is your gut is leaking into your body, so your body fights it. It's something it needs to fight, quite rightly, because that's what the immune system's for, to fight foreign invaders. So it fights it, and then what's happening is your body's fighting you, which is never what you want, because your immune system is your best line of defence. So if you was to go to a doctor and they thought you had an autoimmune condition, they'd probably put you on an immune suppressant, which is not great news, because as I just said, your immune system is your best line of defence. So if you start suppressing it, now what? What else is going to happen? Are we going to start this cycle of another medication and another medication?
Fascinating. So you mentioned, because I interviewed, what was her name? Jeanette Hyde a while ago. She wrote a book called The Gut Makeover, where she likes supplements and sees the values, but is quite pro-food, is quite fermented foods, things like kimchi and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like that was a big part of your rehab process as well as supplementation. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so once I found out what I needed to remove from the diet, I did that, and then it was about restoring, because there's no point just removing, and this is where I think a lot of practitioners that do food intolerance tests, so sometimes you come across personal trainers that are doing food intolerance testing, and they'll just give the client the result, and away they go to remove that from their diet. There needs to be a healing process that happens also, because without the healing process, then after 6 months, that person might think, might be all right now, I'll try eating that again, but you haven't done any healing, you haven't done any repairing to the gut, so your likelihood is you're going to still have that same reaction. So the process was to restore the gut lining, because I did suspect some tearing in the gut lining. So I drank a lot of bone broth at that time. I still do now. I'm still a huge fan of bone broth. But it's very high in collagen, healing to the gut lining. But I do know, when I advise clients about this process, I know that bone broth can be an absolute faff to make. It's like 48 hours of boiling up bones. Not everyone's got the time. They can't be bothered. I work with vegetarians, but the whole idea of bone broth will send them running for the hills. So that's when supplements also can come in handy, because L-glutamine, for example, very high in collagen, can start to stick gut lining back together again, almost like when you plaster a wall. L-glutamine has a very similar effect to the gut in terms of healing. So it's always good to have both options available, because what I find is, I recently went to a raw food workshop with a nutritionist that was very much into raw food, telling people that, you should be having 80-90% raw food in your diet. And I see my clients on a rainbow bridge. And what I mean by that is, this is something Paul CHEK talks about a lot, it depends what their starting point is when they come to you. If you can then start talking to them about raw food, organic food, and if somebody's only just coming away from microwave meals and oven chips, you're going to have to get them a little bit further across the bridge before you start throwing everything else in. Mm-hmm. So you can't really be saying about, I wouldn't. I'm not to tell what anyone else would do, but I wouldn't advise my clients this is the only way to do it. I like to give my clients options, and for me, my job is just about empowerment. So empowering people with enough knowledge and education for them to go away and make better choices on their own. And the better choices for them might be very different to the better choices that my previous client makes, but everybody's on their own journey here.
Okay, taking a switch, talking about the journey, mindset is something we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast of recent, and while I don't want to go into mindset per se because we've been there, I know one of your skills is hypnotherapy. So, I mean, I've had hypnotherapy, I don't know, about 4 or 5 times before, and it wasn't personally successful for me. Now, I'm wondering what you feel hypnotherapy does on top of, let's just say, a normal mindset approach where we're looking to rewire how people think, how they feel about themselves, their perception of the world, etc.
So hypnotherapy works in the subconscious mind. So it's slightly different to how if we were having a conversation now and you said, but I'm going to do affirmations and I'm going to start making a gratitude list, and you're working on your conscious mind then. Subconscious mind is where 90% of all our habits and behaviours are stored. Prime example of this is if you drive, you can drive from point A to point B without actually remembering how you got there, because it is a stored sequence of changing gear. It's all of that is stored in a subconscious mind. You don't even need to think about it. Watching a baby walk, they're really concentrating on the first steps they're taking. We don't always walk around concentrating on every step we take now, because it's a habit that's stored in our subconscious, and they're the habits that you would need to get to via hypnotherapy, because you will struggle to change them in a conscious mind. So they're usually habits that have been quite a long time. So I work with a lot of people come to see me with negative eating habits, and they can go back to childhood. When your mum used to say, you're not getting down till you finish your plate, or you've fallen over and hurt your knee, come and have a biscuit, and it links an emotional eating habit. So it's all there stored in the subconscious. So I believe how hypnotherapy works, and not for everyone, because I think you have to really, really want the change, and you have to believe that hypnotherapy is going to work for you. So that's the bit that happens in the conscious mind. I've decided I want this change, and I think this would work for me. If you come in, I've often turned clients away. Number one is stop smoking. They'll come in and they'll say, and I actually don't even do stop smoking anymore, because I just find it an absolute bore. It's like 2 hours of just talking, and half the time I'll speak to a client and I'll say, why do you want to stop smoking? And they'll say, well, my doctor said I've got to. And I'm like, right, I'm not going to take your money or do any hypnotherapy on you because it's not your doctor here having the session.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't change your mind because it doesn't sound like you want to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the other side of the coin, if I get somebody coming in saying, my mum died of lung cancer, I can't quit smoking on my own, I desperately don't want to smoke around my children, please help me, then it's going to work for them. It's going to work a lot better than, guy A. So it works because you are bypassing the front of the brain called the CCF, which is your conscious critical faculty. And that is the point in the brain where if you're having a rubbish day and someone says to you, you look good today, your CCF will just bounce it out and say, no, I don't. You just won't accept it. It's almost like a gate down in the front of the brain. Under hypnotherapy, if you go through something called progressive muscle relaxation, where you start to rest each part of the body very, very slowly, from the top of the head to the tip of the toes, very slow progressive muscle relaxation, then the CCF will start to open like Tower Bridge, and then you go in and you can start to plant some very strong messages in the subconscious. I'd love to say I've had a 100% success rate, but it's very much dependent on that person and what's going on in their minds and if they really, really want to change. I've also had people that have changed for a time, and then it's almost like they needed a top-up treatment because, shit happens in life.
Mm-hmm.
One particular girl, she came to see me, she wanted to stop drinking. It was really, really affecting her. She wasn't an alcoholic, but she was drinking way too heavily. She did stop for about 6 months, and then she lost her nan. So in the very deep depths of her subconscious, that's her control mechanism. Mm-hmm. That's how she needed to then go back and deal with that. So you don't know what's going to happen in life. You don't know if it's all going to be plain sailing. It might help you for a short time. It might not help you at all. But there is definitely some science in it, definitely.
Well, we've all got our flaws or weaknesses as an individual, and we need to be self-aware enough to manage them. And, that girl in context, she's self-aware enough to know that is a personality flaw, and she just needs to work a little bit harder than other people to maintain that so it doesn't become a progressive negative. And it was great that she came back to you. One of the things you said about going back to childhood. Now, obviously, we're built and wired from a huge amount of childhood experiences and memories that can ingrain in us. Is hypnotherapy kind of the same or similar to is it regression therapy, where you can almost take someone back and rewire that process?
I don't personally do that, just because on the course that I did for hypnotherapy, we didn't cover it. We learned it, but we didn't cover the practical assessment in it. You can do a separate course just on past life regression or even just childhood regression. It's lots of hypnotherapists do that. But it's not something that I practice, and I think you have to be very careful. So one of the things that I learned when I was studying hypnotherapy is if you take people back to a time that wasn't very happy for them, then you are kind of playing with fire a little bit. Sometimes it's really, really beneficial because you're taking them back and almost not erasing the memory, but making them okay. So, child regression, you often go back to being a child and you cuddle your childlike self because you needed a cuddle then. Mm-hmm. When you come back to present day, you feel better because you got what you needed and you've changed that memory almost. You can also give people false memories, which you have to be very careful of also. Mm-hmm. And this often happens when you have hypnotherapists that deal with clients that have been through horrific experiences such as rape. So you do have to be extremely careful, and it's not something that, for my purpose, in terms of what I do with mind and body detox, it's not something that we ever really need to do. We can get where we need to just with the skill set that we have. If I felt someone needed it, I'd refer them elsewhere.
Okay, interesting. All right, cool. So when we were setting up this interview, it was your is it partner? Husband. I was initially talking to, who's the physical arm of what you do, and he sort of talked a lot about kind of toxins and stuff. And I think this is quite an interesting ongoing topic in fitness. Not so much now. When I was going through my training as a nutritionist, 11 years ago now, that kind of 11 to 7 years ago mark, there was an awful lot of articles around all these different compounds, aspartame, different sweeteners, things in our food, cooking with pans and non-stick stuff, like, and it, you know, I can imagine it got quite paralysing for a lot of people, just every day reading about a new nutrient that was going to kill you. What's your kind of view on toxins right now and how you coach it in your practice? Because, you know, I suppose, how much do we need to be concerned is the big thing. In the context of a really bad diet, sure. In the context of an otherwise healthy diet, you know, where does the dust settle, and how do we, I suppose, measure it?
I think it's really difficult to measure it, and I think it's really difficult to tell people everything about toxins without scaring them half to death, so that they'd end up just going to live on a mountain somewhere and drinking water from a well, because you're right. Every single day there's new, something else is published, and another news article, and another scientific paper comes out, and it can be overwhelming, it can be daunting, it can be frightening. And if I've got a client that's coming into me because they want to lose some weight, and then I start preaching to them about all the toxins in their diet, it's going to be mind-boggling and frightening for them. So again, we have to think about that rainbow bridge, about where that person is, and then how far we're going to get them across, because everyone's got a different pot of gold. So I just say to people that in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about detoxification of the body, because we have kidney and liver and large intestines and skin, and these are all detoxification organs that would work perfectly with the internal toxins that the body produces just through, you know, cellular renewal and digestive system. They would work fine for that, and then a few extra toxins, external toxins that come in. Unfortunately, now we have so many external toxins coming in. We are bombarded with them on a daily basis. I think I read a ludicrous figure. They said that it's not, some holistic centre in America quoted, it's not unusual for the average person to come into contact with 2.1 million toxins on a daily basis. And I thought, oh my God, how are we still alive? But when you actually think about where these are coming from, and you think about, you know, our skincare and our beauty products and our food and genetic modification and pesticides and herbicides and all these additives that are not fully tested before they're put into the food industry, and it's frightening, in America more so. So yeah, it's kind of where do you have that cut off? And I just say that you have to take some ownership to limit some, because if you just either have blind faith and say, well, you know, the government is in the food industry, so the government must say it's okay. Well, you know, unfortunately, that's not how the way of the world anymore. You need to do your own research in these things and find out what sits well with you. But also coming from a mother's perspective, I have two little girls, 5 and 8, and if there is a lot of research, no smoke without fire, in my opinion, on a particular product that seems to be in quite a lot of things that you can buy in a supermarket, then I will start to limit it. So I talk to people about decreasing their toxins. It's not about you can't have this and you can't have that. It's limit it. You know, limit it if you can. Find a different alternative. And for something like aspartame, which there is over 400 reports on now, I think over 900 reports on, that is definitely a no smoke without a fire situation. So I think that is something that you should limit. If you want to completely, I mean, I've eradicated it from my children's diet, but if I think it's something that you should really look at limiting, because there are so many alternatives. You know, we've now got stevia, which comes from a plant. It's, you know, not processed in a lab, and so there are better alternatives. So why would you not go for the better alternatives? It's like when Interpol say that we can't travel to a certain country because there's been a terrorist attack there, so everyone finds a different holiday destination to go to. It's fine. And even though it's probably a really slim chance that there's ever going to be another terrorist attack, and that we all still avoid it. And I think it's the same thing. You have to take ownership for your own health. And decreasing your toxic load is just about self-preservation. So we've only got one body that needs to last us. And I think that we need to take some responsibility for keeping it well and not just assume it's going to be kept well for the foods that are in the food industry at the moment. They're so tampered with. You know that. We live in an imperfect food industry now. It's changed more in the last 50 years than 10,000 years before because of wonderful companies like Monsanto and GMO and GE and herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, estrogen in the food chain, hormones and antibiotics in the food chain. We need to really start scrutinising what choices we're making, and it needs to be your own responsibility rather than just pushing it to somebody else. And research says it's fine, so I'm just going to carry on having it.
Yeah, I think I agree to a degree, but I think, when we start to look at the context and in every day, every man, every woman's diet, I know that we can make alternative choices with some stuff, but let's say someone really likes Diet Coke, and Diet Coke's got aspartame in it, and there's not really an alternative if you want a calorie-free drink that it tastes as good as Coke. You can have Coke Life, but then that's got calories in it, but it doesn't have the aspartame, etc. So it's kind of like, you might have said, oh, actually aspartame is something I would never have. But in the context of, if I had 2 Diet Cokes a week, do we think that's going to be a problem? The research does indicate, even on the studies that are done in rats, you have to be having a boatload of aspartame for it to actually have any kind of neurological effect. And even if it is a tiny toxin, we're exposed to tiny toxins that our body is very well and capable of dealing with. So is it a case of, look, if we can get an individual to have a diet that is 90% bang on, and that 10% is a bit of aspartame, a bit of formaldehyde, a bit of this, then the body, for what we know, is just going to be like, yeah, I can deal with that.
Yeah, that massively depends on how well that person is and what their other diet is, what else they're eating. But yes, if somebody is eating a 90% good diet and they don't have underlying medical conditions that would make them have kidney failure, then it's the dose that makes the poison. I completely agree with you, and that is a sentence I say all the time to my clients. It's the dose that makes the poison. So, choose your poison very carefully and monitor the dose that you're having. But at the same time, I feel like I live personally for me and my children, and my husband, we live an 80-20 life. It's banded about all the time, 80-20. We live an 80-20 life. 80% of the time we are focused on what choices we're making, what food we are putting in our supermarket trolley, in our cupboards, in our stomachs. And then the 20% of the time, we can chill out a little bit about it. But there are a handful of ingredients that I will go all out to avoid, so that when I do have that 20%, I don't have to overthink about it. Oh God, but I had that toxin and that toxin. I'm like, no, I'm just getting rid of those so I can enjoy my 20% guilt-free when I'm having it. And one of those is aspartame. The longest running study on aspartame was for 22 years, and one of the findings, it was by Harvard University, and one of the findings in that, it would only take 1 diet soda a day to increase your chances of things like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so, I mean, you could cherry pick research.
You could. Do you think that research is now... Because I think, for me, the most promising area of research with artificial sweeteners is its effect on the gut microbiome. So do you think this is where the connection is, that actually a bigger picture is going to emerge with how it's making the gut respond and thus the immune system, and that's where these disease states are potentially starting to get a look in?
Yeah, definitely. And when you have a look at the conditions that, I'm not going to say aspartame causes them, but can contribute to, it kind of mimics a lot of other conditions. So, because it's an endocrine disruptor. So you've got hormones and thyroid and all of those thrown into the mix. So you could be, if I had a client that come to me that said that they had been diagnosed with something like Graves' disease, one of the first questions I'd be asking them is about what they eat and drink. And if they do eat a lot of low-fat, no-fat, fatty foods, then I would hazard a guess that is contributing to their condition in a massive way. So somebody like that, that's what I'm saying about underlying conditions. So somebody like that, then it's a massive no-no. But if you are, your average Joe, goes to the gym, trains, eats well, and goes out on a Friday night for a pizza and a Diet Coke, I'm not thinking you're going to get Graves' disease anytime soon.
Fair enough. Very fair enough. Okay, so wrapping up the show, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued currently by kind of a key question of asking other practitioners, and that is, if there's, say, 2 or 3 things that you think make the biggest impact on our state of health or maybe people's state of change, what would they be? What would the couple of things that you think have the most influence?
Well, that's one. Our company is called Mind and Body Detox, because I think, especially if we're talking about decreasing your toxic load, the one thing that people forget is the most toxic part of your body is your mind. And, you can go on every detox and retreat and eat well, but if you've got a toxic mind full of negativity, and, you've covered mindset lots, so you know that you need to be working on both, that they go hand in hand. It's synergy. It's working on the mind and working on the body. And working on the mind, just a couple of healthy habits and daily disciplines, like affirmations, a gratitude list, have an attitude of forgiveness. Just a couple of, I would say to clients, 2 or 3 things that you want to nail over the next month. Choose the most important. Do it every day for a week. When you've done it every day for a week, introduce another thing. Mm-hmm. Because what you get, I actually wrote a blog at the beginning of the year about the pressure that we put ourselves under with New Year's resolutions. And what happens is, come the end of the following year, you end up with 10 things that you never achieved because you've made this massive list. Just, choose 10 things, but number them in order of what's most important to you. And you start with number 1 and do not move on to number 2 until you've nailed number 1. You've done it every single day for a week or even a month. It's become a new habit, a new formed habit in the subconscious. And then move on to the next one, because it's so much better to get to the end of the year with 1 new positive habit and then a list of 10 failed ones. So what impacts people the most? It's going to be different for everybody because it depends on what their goal is and what they want. But as long as they're working a little bit on the mind and a little bit on the body, and of course I'm biased and I'm going to say it's far more important to be working on your nutrition than getting down the gym. So I see so many people that come to me and they're like, I know I should be going to the gym. And when I look at what they're eating, there's no way they'd fuel a workout with that anyway. So they'd probably just end up very, very sick. So let's get the diet right first. Let's focus on clean eating, focus on a couple of toxins that you're just going to avoid at all costs, because that has got to be a bonus to your body at least. And then you know that you are committing to yourself to make some positive changes.
Okay, cool. All right.
And one final thing there, what I would say is don't compare. Don't compare, because so many people are looking over their shoulder. What are they doing? Instagram, I hate it. Everyone's got their 6-packs out and it's everyone's just making all these comparisons. It's so unhealthy. Just stay focused on where you're going and don't worry about what the person next door is doing.
A hymn from my hymn book. I don't know if you've seen the video that I released last week called Screw Perfection.
No.
But that's a message about stop looking at the perfection of the fitness industry and focus on what you're about and improving yourself. And it was another one of my high video pieces. I think it's about 100,000 on Facebook views at the moment. So I'm with you 100% on that, totally. So if anyone wanted to kind of find your blog, your social stuff, or wherever you like to push people to, where can they find those links? Let people know now.
The easiest place is our website, which is www.mindandbodydetox.co.uk. We've also got a Facebook page of the same name, Mind and Body Detox, Instagram, all the usual places, and it's all under Mind and Body Detox, so you'll find us there.
Okay, Mind and Body Detox.
Yeah, that's cool. It. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, Jaclyn, thank you very much for your time today. It's been lovely to speak to you, your journey, what you believe in, what's going down in your world. For everyone that's listening on the show today, please, Jaclyn, you're on Twitter.
Yeah, I am on Twitter. I'm on Twitter because it's like previous to Mind and Body, but it's Jaclyn Dunne 78 or Jaclyn D 78 Twitter.
Okay, cool. I asked because a lot of people tend to talk about the show on Twitter, so it's always worth an ask. So there you go. Look, please support the show. Tag someone into the post that you think could benefit from the conversation of what we've talked about today. We've reaffirmed some common trends on the podcast from today's show. We've talked about some new stuff. I was quite keen to kind of look at the hypnotherapy angle, which is I definitely think it's an interesting one. We know how powerful the mind is. We've talked about it a lot already. But enjoy the show. Tag someone in. If you've not left a review on iTunes yet, then do. And I will be back on Monday with my solo show. And if you want a question asked on the Monday show, then email bencoomber@gmail.com with the subject line podcast. And your question may get asked if it's a good one. Right, that's goodbye from me. Goodbye from Jaclyn.
Ben. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for everyone else, stay awesome. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 216, where today we are going to be talking about fat loss, hypermobility and training. And I think we've got